theyeshiva.net.
Okay. We'll begin today a new mimer that's connected to Pesach. Today is Beis Nissan. Even according to the Shimon ben Gamliel, you start learning about Pesach. The Gemara in Pesachim quotes a machloikas between the Chaim and Shimon ben Gamliel. When you start learning about Pesach, Shoylim v'dershim b'hilchas hachag shloshim yom kaidem hachag. Chachamim say you start 30 days before. The Shimon ben Gamliel says 2 weeks before, because Moshe started to talk about it 2 weeks before. Rish Chodesh Nissan. We read yesterday's HaChodesh Hazal Lachem Rish Chadashim Rishon Hu Lachem L'Chadshei Hashana, and he started to speak about the Karban Pesach and Pesach. Today, according to all the shittas, one could certainly prepare. So we'll begin our new Maimer on Pesach. The Maimarim of Pesach of the Balatanya, primarily in Likkutei Parshas Tzav. They're put into Tzav. So please go to, we'll do the first one on Pesach, which is on page 22. On the bottom, all the way on the bottom, the right column on the bottom, or Daf Yud Aleph, column 3 on the bottom. Lahavin Mashakasav B'Hagad. You see on the bottom of 22, Lahavin Mashakasav B'Hagad. He says, Lahavin Mashakasav B'Hagad, to understand what we say in the Haggadah, Matzah zu shanu eichlem al shoma al shum shloi hispik b'tzekas shlo v'seinu lahachmetz. Ad shenigla melech malchei hamlachem HaKadosh Baruch Hu ga'olam. We pick up the matzah, we hold the matzah, and we say, this matzah that we're eating, why are we eating it? Because the dough of our fathers, of our forefathers, lo hispik, did not have the opportunity to become leaven, to become chametz, to rise, until Hashem revealed himself and he redeemed them. And the Haggadah quotes the pasuk that the Jewish people baked the doughs that they prepared, the flour or dough that they prepared, they baked it as matzah. Why? Ki gershom Mitzrayim, because they were expelled, they were thrown out of Egypt, and therefore they didn't even have a chance to let it rise, to let it ferment. They had to immediately leave, and hence it was baked as matzah. Because they had to put it in the ovens immediately, and they didn't have that chance. People who make today sourdough challah, the real fermenting could take some time, and every type of fermenting takes time. They didn't have a chance. The mashma. What does this indicate? Ha'ilu loy gurshu. If they would have not been expelled, if the Egyptians would have said, take your time, do it on your pace, v'hispik lahachmetz, and the dough would have an opportunity to ferment. They wouldn't have to throw it into the oven and eat matzah, because they would have all the time they wanted, and they would have baked the bread in an ordinary fashion where you allow it to rise. Hayoichlem chametz. They would eat chametz. He says, Ki gershom Mitzrayim, because they were expelled. Therefore, they had to bake it as matzah. Already, they were commanded. Moshe commanded to them, on the 10th of the month, all of the mitzvahs that are discussed in Parshas HaChodesh. One of them is, you should eat the meat of the Karban Pesach on this night. And that meat they had to buy, it says from the 10th of Nissan, that's why it says ba'asr. You had to take the sheep or the goat and prepare it for the carbon 4 days earlier. And the pasuk continues, al matzahs, u'mirorim yechlu. Eat it together with matzah and matzah. In other words, the commandment to eat matzah came already on Rosh Chodesh Nissan. And Moshe Rabbeinu said, on the 10th of Nissan, you should prepare the Karban Pesach and eat it with matzah. So already on the 10th of Nissan, they already had to, either they knew about the matzah, prepare the matzah, realized there's going to be matzah. Let's say there would have been no story with the Egyptians. Nobody would have been expelled. They have all the time in the world. They still had to eat matzah. There was a mitzvah that the night of Pesach, you eat matzah. What is matzah zu shanu eichlem al shoma? You know why we're eating this matzah? Because the Torah says, "Ba'erev teichlu matzahs." On the night of Pesach, you should eat matzahs. And that night, they also ate matzahs before they left Mitzrayim by day. They ate matzah at the Seder. Why did they eat matzah at the Seder? Nobody threw them out yet. It was before Makas Pcheres. They didn't have permission to leave yet. The permission to leave came in the middle of the night, after the first male born, the oldest males died, so Paro got up and he said, leave. And they rushed them and they hastened them. Fine, I understand. But they ate matzah much earlier. They ate matzah at the beginning of the night, together with the carbon Pesach. Why did they eat matzah? They were in Egypt. The answer is because Hashem said that at this night you eat matzah. So you should say, matzah zu shal noichel mal shumma, because it's a mitzvah to eat matzah, just like the Jewish people. The first night of Pesach ate matzah. There was another story that happened the next day. And that is, it happens to be that what? That they were expelled. They didn't have a chance to make matzah, to make chametz, so they ate matzah. That's what he says. That's the matzah zu shal noichel mal shumma. V'gam l'doides, also for generations, nitztavu, they were told in Parshas Boy, the same parsha, Shivas Yamim, Sa'ir, Lo yimatzeh bebateichem chuli, b'chol moishveseichem teichlu matzos. For 7 days, there shouldn't be chametz. In all of your moishveseichem, b'chol moishveseichem, in all of your communities, wherever you live, teichlu matzos, you should eat matzah. The lashon is, Shiva, in the end of Parshas Bayit, Shivas Yamim Sa'ir Lo Yimatzeh, close to the end, Perikid Beis Pasuk Yutes. Shivas Yamim Sa'ir Lo Yimatzeh Bebateichem. You shouldn't have Sa'ir yeast chametz 7 days in your house, because whoever eats chametz, there's a penalty of kares. Kol machmetzes lo yisechelu b'chol moishveseichem teichlu matzos. Now, when was all of this? When does all of this happen? This is basically the commandment that Hashem gives to Moshe on Rosh Chodesh Nissan. This is 2 weeks before they're leaving. He tells them on the 10th of Nissan, you should bring a carbon Pesach. That night, the night of Tesvav, you should eat the meat together with matzah, to eat together with mother, and all of the instructions how to eat it. It should be roasted, it shouldn't be cooked, etc., to put the blood on the doors. And then he says, this day will be a zikaron. 7 days you'll eat matzah. Erev Pesach you should get rid of the chametz. And then he adds, for 7 days throughout all the generations, there shouldn't be chametz in your house. And b'chol moshveseichem teichlu matzos. Remember, this is all in Egypt, 2 weeks before Yetzias Mitzrayim. That means that before anybody ran, before anybody was expelled, before anybody had an issue with it becoming chametz or becoming matzah, because at that time there was already a mitzvah that Hashem gave, that on Pesach you don't eat chametz, and on Pesach you eat matzah. And the first night it's a mitzvah min ha-Torah, be'erev teichel matzah, just like then it was a mitzvah. And then the pasuk continues, Moshe called them, and he told them all of these mitzvahs. And then is the actual story. In the middle of the night, Hashem struck every b'chayr and chased them out. And the Egyptians were so anxious for them to get out. So then it says they took their dough before it became chametz. They took their dough before it became chametz. This is later. Why terem yachmetz? Because they were in such a rush. Nonetheless, what do we say to the Haggadah? That the reason we're eating matzah is why? Because of that story. Shalai hispik b'tzekas shlavasena lachmas. It didn't have time. On l'chayda, it's an interesting addition, but even without that story, we would still be eating matzahs, just like they ate matzahs the first night. We're mechuyev to eat matzah. O b'pasuk atzma yesh lahav. In the pasuk itself, not only in the Haggadah question on the Haggadah, the way the Haggadah, which is based on the Mechilta, the way the Haggadah, the way the Chazal formulated the mitzvah of matzah. But in the pasuk itself, you have to understand. Shahatzivu shaladoides hayazechel yitzias Mitzrayim. The mitzvah for generations was all a commemoration to what happened by the Exodus of Egypt. In other words, Hashem told Moshe, this is what you're going to do tonight, this year, and then there's what I want you to do every single year. What do I want you to do this year? Make a carbon Pesach, eat matzah, etc. What do I want you to do each year? Lizikaron. He says, make a holiday, eat matzah 7 days, get rid of the chametz erev Pesach, and you're not allowed to eat chametz for 7 days. Shivas yom yisrael matzah bebateichem, and eat matzah. Stellt sich the shayla hatziv v'ledoides hayazechel yitzias Mitzrayim. V'aloi Pesach Mitzrayim einay noyeg yisur chametz alo yom echad kedusah b'gemara peirik tes psachim daf tzadik vav med beis. But here you have an interesting anomaly. The Gemara explains in Psachim that Pesach Mitzrayim, the Isur Chametz was only 1 day, not 7 days. In other words, that year, the year when they came out of Mitzrayim, the Isur Chametz was the first day. That was the Isur Chametz. Yom Echad. So it's a very strange thing, which is why they would have baked it as chametz. L'cha'ira, if there was an isser to have chametz for 7 days, what do you mean? They baked it as matzah because the Egyptians expelled them. Nobody's expelling us. We're still not baking chametz. The answer is we're not allowed to. But over there, the isser was only yom echad.
Yom echad or just the
First night. Right. Right. The Lashon Gemara is... Oh. It's
because on that day they had to use matzah anyway. So this expelled story.
Exactly. So they had to make matzah because they were expelled. And then what are we doing to commemorate Yetzias Mitzrayim? What are we doing? 7 days. So he says that itself has to be understood. Shivas Yom Yisrael Matzah B'Teichem, when that didn't even exist originally. What existed originally was Isser 1 day and to eat matzah that night.
But even for that generation, they had to eat matzah also on that day. So what is this strange story?
No, only at night.
Even if at night. So
Only at night. They didn't have it for 7 days.
Right, but still they had to eat matzah on that night, right?
That night, yeah.
So what's the story? If they expelled or not expelled, they would have to make matzahs anyway.
The Lashon Mishnah is Kedai to quote. The Lashon Mishnah is Daf Tzadik Vav Amud Aleph. The Mishnah says, "Ma ben Pesach Mitzrayim le Pesach Doidos." What's the difference between Pesach Mitzrayim, the Pesach that they made there, and the Pesach we do in generations? So he says over there they had to take the carbon Pesach on the 10th of Nissan. Okay, they had to sprinkle the blood with a bundle of hyssop and on their doors. They had to eat it fast, but Laila Echad that night. Pesach Doiros noyeg kol shiva, and Pesach Doiros is noyeg all the 7 days of Yom Tov. That's what the Mishnah says on Tzadik Vav Amud Aleph. The reason the Balatanya here Tzadik Vav Amud Beis is because this Mishnah is cryptic. So that's why the Gemara explains. Rabbi Haglili explains that what? Shepesach mit Pesach Mitzrayim ein chimutzei noyeg ela yom echad. The Isser to eat chametz in Mitzrayim was noyeg only 1 day. Why? It says lo yachol chametz hayoym atem yotzim Mitzrayim, that the Isser achilas chametz was noyeg by Pesach Mitzrayim that 1 day. That 1 day also. The day also. And Pesach Doidos it's noyeg kol shiva.
Does it mean that they were supposed to have matzah anyhow?
Yeah. That's the question. They were supposed to have matzah anyway. The fact that they were chased out is a completely separate issue.
In the morning when they were baking matzah, and they would have let it rise. Would they have let it rise because of the tzivui? They have to bake it into matzah. In the morning of Thyself, they have to keep it from becoming chametz.
When they were told to eat matzah the first time, did they know which day?
Yeah, the 14th, The 14th, he said clearly.
7 days.
7 days, L'doidus, for generations, is an Isser for 7 days. And already Erev Pesach, you have to get rid of the chametz.
They knew that they were going to go out also, and they could have baked ahead of time regularly.
At that time, there was no slavery anymore. They had freedom to move.
The Gemara says already Rosh Hashanah, they were Rosh Hashanah Batla Avodim in Mitzrayim.
So they had time to plan it. So why in the last minute everything happened?
No, it wasn't like that. It was 2 weeks before. They needed to get a sheep and a goat on the 10th of Nissan, leave it 4 days, schalta, and then be at Makram on the 4th day. It wasn't so rushed.
Well, I'm saying the matzah itself, they had time to plan to make
And they did plan it, like we plan it. They knew that the night of Yudalad Nissan, the night of Tesvav, they have to have a Seder and eat the Korban Pesach, sheep or goat with the families, and also eat matzah and eat maror.
What does it say, Kigosh?
Right. And in the Haggadah, The reason the Haggadah says we eat matzah is why? Because they were expelled and they didn't have time to let the dough rise. When even if that would have happened, okay, it happened, but even if that would have not happened, we're still eating matzah at night. Just like they ate matzah the first night. Why? Because the Torah says the night of Pesach you eat matzah the first night, the first time, and the anniversary every year. There was an additional thing that they were expelled. But they were told already, this night you eat matzah, and seven, and not just then, but also l'doides for generations, to eat matzah the first night, not to eat chametz for 7 days, etc. Then he asks another shaila in the pasuk itself. Moshe says, there's what to do this year, what you're going to do for all the generations. Why are you going to do it all the generations? Lizikaron, to remember, Zechel Yitzias Mitzrayim. He says, but there's something weird, strange here. When it comes to matzah, we're doing what we did then. When it comes to chametz, then the issur was noyeg only one day.
So the question that he's not asking here is that the Haggadah asks a question and gives a reason, but the Pasuk also asks the same question. It's a different reason.
Which
We're doing it because of the Zeichel season turn. And we're saying because of Gershon.
right? No, that's a separate child. He says, but pasuk atzma yesh lahavin that the tzivui l'doides was zeichel etzias Mitzrayim. But if you go back to the original, there was a completely different setup. When we're offering a carbon Pesach, it comes with a 7-day package, right? You eat the carbon Pesach the first night, and you're not allowed to eat matzah for 7 days, 7 days of Pesach plus Erev Pesach. When it comes to Pesach Mitzrayim, the Gemara says, Ein noyeg iser chametz elo yom echad, only that one day. The lashon was Pesach Mitzrayim. They were asked to eat chametz one night, the night of Pesach. Rabbi Yosef Glili says no, noyeg elo yom echad. It was one day, and he says that what that Isra Achilas chametz was noyeg Pesach Mitzrayim throughout the whole day, not only the night. Okay, so it went by day and by night, but that's it. That's it. It was over. The second night of Pesach, what we call the second night of Pesach, right? The second Seder in Chutz La'aretz or Chol HaMoed in Eretz Yisrael. It's already chametz. You don't have to wait till Achin Shel Pesach. Mitzvah Achin Shel Pesach. So he says there's something off. It's like the original was much weaker than the copy. We're doing it as a copy, and really it's much weaker. Those are the questions. V'ha'inyan, the explanation in this is the Pesach Mitzrayim eine noyeg elo yom echad. Pesach Mitzrayim was taka noyeg only one day. In other words, the Isur Chametz was only one day. V'lachein dafke kegershu. And that's why the reason they didn't eat chametz the first night and first day was taka because the mitzvah. But then he says, V'lachein dafke kegershu. But that's why there had to be this whole thing, that it's because they were expelled. Because machma zeh she'achlu matzah gam b'shar yemais HaPesach. That's the reason they were eating matzah on the second day, and on the third day, and on the fourth day. Hagufa. Because the Isser was only. By us, the reason we're not eating chametz for 7 days, because there's an Isser to eat chametz for 7 days. They didn't have that Isser. So the second night of Pesach, the night after Yetzias Mitzrayim, right? They could have eaten chametz. The next day they could have eaten chametz. Why didn't they eat chametz? Because they didn't have. Why didn't they have? Because they were expelled. It's not like they took the dough and they fermented it and they had bread and they took it out and they fed their kids bread. They had matzah, they threw it in the oven before it rised and inflated itself, before it fermented. So they had only matzah. V'lechein dafke kegershu machmazeh shachal matzah gam b'shar yemei Pesach. V'chein kasav hamizrachi b'Parshas Re'eh al pasuk ki b'chipazon yatzasa. Rabbi Eliyahu Mizrachi, the great commentator on Rashi, explains in Parshas Re'eh on the pasuk, you should eat matzah. Why? Ki b'chipazon yatzasa. Because you rushed out. Same question. That's not the reason why you're eating matzah. Ki b'chipazon yatzasa, because you went in haste. Chipazon means with tremendous rizus, with tremendous swiftness and alacrity.
It's like they did the opposite. They told him to do matzah and said, you know what, we're going to make bread. Oh, but you rushed them out, so now we don't have time.
So that's the interesting thing. The first night they ate matzah taka because it was a mitzvah to eat matzah. And they couldn't eat chametz. First of all, there was a mitzvah to eat matzah, and they also couldn't eat chametz, two things. So they couldn't have it together. The next day there was takanis or chametz. But you need bread, you're going on the desert, they wanted to have food, right? You're going on a trip. You know how Jews travel. Especially when you're going to a desert, especially Gans Klal Yisrael together. So after Chepes Essen, yeah. This is before the man, they knew that there's going to be man. So you got to have food. So now the question is, what type of food? So they could have had chametz. You could prepare for the journey with chametz. Because they were expelled, they didn't have chametz. Va'afal pikein, hatzivu shaladoyde zayin yamim. Nonetheless, despite that they didn't have a mitzvah, but for generations, the tzivui is not to have chametz for 7 days. Expelled or not expelled, we have time, but still we have a mitzvah not to do it. V'heim zeichel yitzias Mitzrayim. And it's still called a zeichel yitzias Mitzrayim. So when we say this matzah that we're eating is because they didn't have time, it's strange because we're eating the matzah the night of Pesach when they did have time and it's a mitzvah. So what we just learned here is one nekuda, that because there was taka no Isser the other days, there had to be a special reason they had matzah for the other 7 days. What's the explanation in all of this? This is the introduction to the Maimer. Ulahaven ktsas inyan achilas matzah. So as usual, you got to go back to the core. What is matzah? Verstehen, was is matzah? To understand all of this, you have to understand. Says Ulahaven ktsas inyan achilas matzah. To understand a little bit. Yesh lahakdim inyan moyadim l'simcha. So we first have to introduce the concept of moyadim l'simcha, which Yom Tif, Pesach, is of course one of the three moyadim, the three holidays designated for joy. She'ikir ha-moyadim hu b'chinas ha-simcha. We see from here the main idea of moyadim is simcha. Moyadim l'simcha. That's the lashon we say in davening. V'titen lanu Hashem Elokeinu ba'ahava moyadim l'simcha. You have given us moyadim. Now the word moyed means a designated time. That's what moyed is. Just like we say, beis va'ad l'chachamim. It's a designated place, right? Avad, beis havad, by the Sanhedrin. Or you'll have by the Aron, v'noy adati l'cha shama. What's v'noy adati l'cha shama? Yeah, that's the designated place where I'm going to speak to you. There's designated spaces and there's designated times. Or if you want to express yourself this way, there are islands in space and there are islands in time. An island in space, a person is cruising through a huge ocean, mayim she'en lehem soif, it's endless, and then you see an island in space. Time goes and goes and goes and goes and goes and goes, doesn't stop, the clock stops for nobody. And there's an island in time, just like an island in space, you get out of the ocean and you relax on the island. There's also an island in time. You take off time, you stop the zman, so to speak. The Baal Tanya has an expression that Shabbos is l'mayla min hazman. In other words, there's an island in time when you go into a different mode and you are in a space of moyadim. There's Shabbos and then there's Yom Tov. The definition of moyadim on Yom Tov, the designated time, is for one purpose, simcha. That's the whole purpose of the moyadim. Or the main purpose of the moyadim is to help a person achieve joy. As the pasuk says, v'samachta b'chagecha. The mitzvah is you should rejoice b'chagecha in your holidays, your festivities. We see from here, this is the mitzvah of the chag, a person's simcha, a person's joy. Which, by the way, just in parentheses, I should add, that people prepare for Pesach, a lot of things. From here, it's mashma, the most important preparation is that you should be happy. The most important preparation for Pesach and for Yom Tov B'chlal is that when you're home or wherever you are, you should be happy. You should be in a happy place, in a happy space. Sometimes that preparation is forgotten. But that's actually the most important preparation because that's the purpose of the moyadim. To be in a state of simcha and to generate that to other people. When people are happy, the people around them are happy. When somebody is miserable, usually people around them, especially ones closest to them, are also miserable. Sha'az. Now, what's this concept called simcha? Sha'az uzman gilui moichin de'imah. Yom Tov is a time when there's a certain revelation, not just a certain, or an intense revelation of what's called moichin de'imah. Moichin de'imah literally means the intelligence of the mother. Moichin de'imah is from the word mayach, the brain, the mind, the imah of the mother, which he's going to explain what that means. This is an expression from Kisvei HaArizal, that Yom Tov is the time of moichin de'imah. In the writings of the Arizal, everything is mostly code language, cryptic code language. The expression then is that Yom Tov is the time, in Chaim and other works of the Arizal, is the time of moichin de'imah, the revelation of the mind of the mother. This is what we say in Hallel, Moishivi Akeres Habayis, Eim Habonim Smecha. Moishivi Akeres Habayis is he brings back the Akeres Habayis. Akeres Habayis from the word Akeres, from the word Akara, the one who is infertile. He brings her back, Eim Habonim, she becomes a mother of children, who Smecha, who is rejoicing. We say Hallel on Yom Tov. The opening of Hallel is Eim Habonim Smecha. That's connected to the fact that Yom Tov is the time of Moichin De'imah, the joy that comes from the mother. Eim Habonim Smecha, a mother of children is happy. That's the happiness of a mother, her children, or at least a major part of her happiness, or it's deeply connected to her happiness. That's connected to Hallel, which we say on Yom Tov. V'hinei b'Shabbos hu gilui moichin da'abba. Shabbos, it says in Kabbalah, is the time of the revelation of Moichin da Abba, the mind of the Father. Vehem Yoser El Yoinim. Moichin da Abba represents something more lofty than Moichin da Imma. Ve'ein Shamchin is Gilui Simcha Kebe Yom. That's why on Shabbos, there's no revelation of joy like on Yom Tov. Shabbos is the energy of Moichin da Abba, which he's going to explain. Yom Tov is the energy of Moichin da Imma. Simcha, especially connected to Eim Habonim Smecha, like we say in Hallel. On Shabbos, you don't have the same explosion or the same manifestation of Simcha on Yom Tov. It says on Yom Tov, V'samachta b'chagecha. On Yom Tov, we say, Moyadim l'simcha. Taka Shabbos is also an inyan of Simcha, especially an inyan of Oineg. There's mitzvahs Oineg Shabbos. But the Simcha is not emphasized like it is on Yom Tov.
Doesn't say Yismcha Malchuscha on Shabbos.
On Shabbos, doesn't say Yismcha Malchuscha, right. Right. That's interesting. Yismcha Malchuscha, so the Svardim say it, but Nusach Ashkenaz, you don't say it on Shabbos. On Yom Tov, you do say it. So here, he's saying something, he's also asking a question. If Moichin da Abba is Yoser El Yoin, and was heißt Ein Shamchin is Gilui Simcha Kebe Yom Tov? L'chayre, there should be more Simcha than on Yom Tov. The explanation is Kehine Biur Mohus Moichin da Imma. To understand what is Moichin da Imma, Yuvon B'Meshe Noida, Sheyesh Beis B'chinas Begilui in Seif Baruch Hu. Have to understand it by introducing that there's two b'chinas, there's two dimensions, Begilui and Seif Baruch Hu, in the revelation and the expression of the light of infinity, of the truth of Hashem. Ha'alef, number one is b'chinas hishtalshalus v'seder hamadregas. What we call hishtalshalus. Hishtalshalus means evolution. The word hishtalshalus comes from the word shalsheles, which is a chain, and it's one of the most fundamental ideas in all of Pnimiyus HaTorah, in the works of Kabbalah and Machshava and Chassidus. This is called Hishtalshalus, which is Seder HaMadregas, the order of steps. The order of steps means the evolution of levels. Shem Pchinas HaHamshachos Me'ila Le'ila Chuli Ha'ara Va'ara Da'ara Chuli. It means that there are two types of Giluyim, two types of revelations, as he says, from Erein Seif Baruch Hu, from the light of infinity. One is the one that's communicated through what we call Hishtalshalus. It evolves. It goes through an order, a hierarchy. Like a Seder, there's a Seder, there's an order. Just like a chain. One rung leads to the lower rung, to the lower rung, to the lower rung. Of course, the chain is the very bad, very inaccurate example, because the chain, the quality of the lowest rung and the quality of the highest rung are exactly identical. It's just one is on the top, one is on the bottom, because it's a physical metaphor. But in spirituality, when you say Hishtalshalus, it means that it actually goes through a process of transformation, or as the energy flows down through the madregas, and that's what he says, Hamshachis me'ila le'ila. Ila is the term in Jewish philosophy, in the Rambam's works and other works, is Ila and Alul. Ila is a cause, and Alul is an effect. Ila is an antecedent, and Alul is the child of that, the offspring, what comes from it. You know, there's the chicken, and there's the egg. What comes first, the chicken or the egg? The answer is the chicken. The egg comes from the chicken, and the egg becomes the mother, the Ila, for a new chicken when it hatches. And that chicken becomes the Ila for a new egg, which becomes an Ila for a new one. In other words, what is an Alul on one level becomes an Ila on another level, right? You are a child of your parents, and then you become a parent of your children. And sometimes you got to be ready for that adjustment. You got to grow up, because you used to think you're an Alul, but now you became an Ila. I was talking to a group of younger light, a particular shul. So I said, Kabed es avicha ve'esimecha doesn't only mean respect your father and mother. It also means respect your fatherhood and respect your motherhood. Respect yourself as a father and mother. It's a Zeit sich zu wachsen. You're not a child anymore. Respect yourself as a father. Respect the father in you. Don't look in the mirror and say, I'm just a little immature, dependent baby. Respect the avicha, the father in you. In other words, rise up. As Shmuel told Shaul HaMelech about Amalek. You may be small in your eyes, but in reality you're a leader, so you have to be able to assume that identity. So the Ila and Alul is that process where there's an Ila, there's a cause, including the first cause, and then it goes down, it just travels downward, and every Alul becomes an Ila, which to another Alul, etc., etc. When you're looking at an apple tree, right, you're looking at an Alul. At an alul, the seed is the antecedent, but that seed came from a previous apple tree all the way back to where? To Sheshes Mebedeshes, to the first apple tree. And that really means that all of history is connected, you know. My DNA today, right, is a direct link to the DNA of my progenitors thousands and thousands of years ago. And in that sense, you know, history is very tight. It's very, very small. It's like the past is in the present and the future is also in the present. So that's the process of Hishtalshelus, both on a physical level, but on a physical level is only a manifestation of the spiritual level. Ha'arev, ha'ared, ha'ared. There's a ray, and then there's the ray of the ray, and there's the ray of the ray of the ray of the ray, etc. Kamashal, seichel b'midas, u'midas b'machshava chuli. An example for this in a person would be, seichel morphs into midas. Midas morphs into machshava. Chuli, dibur, and maisa. Seichel would mean deep awareness of something. Seichel is an idea. Midas is the way the idea develops into a value that a person has. Yeah. A value means something that's a personal value. Seichel is just an idea which could be abstract. It's something one appreciates intellectually as an idea. Midas means the next step is it becomes something meaningful to me, something I believe in, something I feel is the right thing. Midas is that feeling, I feel this is the right thing. Then there is machshava. Machshava is actually thinking about it, thoughts. There's words, there's actions. That's an example for Hishtalshelus, where it evolves from one place to another place, seichel to midas to machshava, etc.
We always used to say that machshava comes before midos, that we don't experience, we don't emote until we conceive of the thought. It's our thoughts that lead us to emote.
Okay, that's a good question. You're asking that machshava exists even in seichel. How could you understand an idea without machshava? We can't process any seichel or any midas without machshava. Everything is through machshava. There's two concepts when we speak about machshava. There's machshava as a levush for seichel, and there's machshava as an independent reality. Meaning, all ideas we can only process through thoughts. There's no idea, I can't know about an idea without thought. But in that level, thought is a garment. It's a levush that processes the machshava. Let's think about this. People think in different languages. Some of you think in Russian, some of you think in English, some of you think in Yiddish or Hebrew, whatever the language is. We think in different languages like we speak in different languages. So, two people may be giving a speech, they're saying the same idea, but they're speaking in different languages. Right? We may be thinking the same idea, but in different languages. In other words, machshava is basically made up of letters and words and oisius that carry every seichel or every midah in a conscious way. So it's just like words. It's just words in a much more transcendent, subtle, and abstract way. That's machshava as a levush, as a cloak, that carries any single idea. And that's why you could say the same seichel in different oisius. Sometimes the Ran, the Rosh, and Tosfos are saying the same svara completely in different words. The same idea is being conveyed in completely different words. One says it this way, and one says it the other way. But it's really the same seichel. In other words, the seichel transcends the machshava, transcends the oisius. The same is true the midah. The midah, it's like almost a picture. It's a picture of something. And then in order to process it, you have the letters of thought that allow you to process it. That's why, I'll give you another example. Huh? CPU, right. Another thing is, I could read a page, children do it all the time, you could read a page of Mishnayos, right? Memorize it, but not understand the word. Yeah. A lot of people know Ashrei by heart, right? But if you start asking the meaning of it, the person may not know. So I have all the oisius, I have the letters, perfect, mamish perfect. Somebody would hear these letters, they understand it. Another person knows it verbatim much better than the person doesn't understand a word. Why? Because oisius are levush, they carry the idea or the emotion, but they're not synonymous with the idea. They are a levush that carries it. That's why people think in different languages. Yeah, we understand the idea, it's the same idea, but the way I access it is a different language. Mother tongue, usually, yeah. Yeah, people don't realize that they think in a language. Yeah. People don't realize that they think in a language. That's the machshava that is bottled to seichel and midas. In other words, if I'm learning a shtickle Gemara, right, and there's a svara, I process the svara, I access it through oisius, always through oisius. Dibur is where the oisius become very tangible and concrete. You know, you can measure them, you can feel them. They create airwaves, etc. Machshava, the oisius are still very, very subtle. They're more transcendent, they're more edel, they're not so coarse. But there's oisius. Just people are not so aware of it. That's machshava that is a levush for seichel amidas. Here he's talking machshava, actually thinking about something, which can be in the positive or the negative. You know, when somebody's obsessing about something, reflection, you're actually thinking about it. That's already a step after midas. There's machshava, there's dibur, there's maisa. Those are called the levushim. That's machshava as a reality in and of itself, which is part of the evolution that comes after seichel and midas. There's seichel, there's midas, there's machshava.
Are you talking about compilation? The second part? It's when you compile thoughts from different...
That also, that could be on the level of seichel, on the level of midas, or on the level of machshava. Machshava is the activity of actually thinking about something. Your mind is filled with deliberation, thoughts, reflections on this. Sometimes it could be in a very positive sense. Sometimes it could be in a very annoying sense. Whatever the situation is. You know, I can't stop thinking about this. I'm thinking about this all day.
So it's like seichel is like the original idea, and machshava could be a compilation of multiple ideas.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Well, you can come up with new ideas, but through compiling of...
Yeah. And machshava always works. I mean, you can't stop thinking, you know, try to stop thinking.
So the machshava, you have the epiphany?
You could have. Yeah, I mean, there's an interplay between all of them.
There's a higher level of machshava as a levush?
As a levush to seichel and a levush to midas, yeah. The higher, yeah. Right. So that's all an example for hishtalshalus, of how things evolve in hishtalshalus. Now, something may exist on the level of seichel, not on the level of midas. Right? On the level of midas, but not so much of machshava. On the level of machshava, not dibur, not maisa, and so forth. Midas itself, each one itself has many dimensions. In seichel, there's chachma, and there's bina, and there's das, right? In midas, there's so many different types of midas. This is just a very general blueprint, but each one comes with so many levels and branches and sub-branches, etc. When you speak about midas, for example, yeah, there's so many different layers and levels of midas. Midas is basically how seichel becomes personal. It becomes a personal calling, a personal duty. Midas we usually translate emotions. But what exactly is an emotion? I told you a few times, when people say, I feel, you always have to distinguish between what I feel means, right? You'll hear a sentence, somebody says, I don't feel like going to the wedding. Around 60 seconds later, the person will say, but I feel like I have to go to the wedding. What you just said, you don't feel like going to the wedding. They look at themselves as hypocritical. You're not a hypocrite. You're talking about two different realities. There's different levels of ishtalshalus. I don't feel like going to the wedding is basically my body telling me I'm exhausted. That's what it means. I don't feel. My hands and feet and stomach and head and appendix and kidney and pancreas and liver and chest and heart really don't feel like getting into the car and driving to Montreal. That's what it means. It's not the Welt. That's what it means. I don't feel, my liver is not up to it. And my blood is also not up to it. That's it. That's what I don't. A minute later, but I feel like I should go to the wedding. You know why? It's my sister making a wedding. It's my brother making a wedding. It's my close friend making a wedding. And these people are dear to me. So I feel like I should go. What's the difference? The first was simply you're saying I'm not up to it. I'm exhausted. It's like saying I'm just exhausted. The second idea is basically your value. This is your conviction. And you're going to go. You'll probably go. I mean, you'll have to make a choice, but you'll probably go. And the reason is because this is what I feel. It's not translating in my body. My body is not screaming, yay, we're going to the wedding. Sometimes it does. Then you're great. Sometimes the midah, right, actually permeates everything. It goes into machshava, goes into dibur, it goes into maisa, it goes into the guf, and then you're great. Sometimes the midah remains a value that doesn't translate in the most physical sense. Now, the disconnect. Now, often people look at themselves as hypocrites because I don't feel like going to the wedding. How do I not feel? You shouldn't look at yourself a hypocrite. That's why this information is so important. It just means that it didn't go through all the levels of ishtalshalos. So it means you're not a perfect person. So what? It means that not every value is 24 hours felt in every limb of my body. Okay.
This example you gave you, somebody is too tired to go and you realize he has to go. Is that mind ruling over the heart?
Yeah. Okay. What does it mean the mind ruling over the heart? It means what I believe to be valuable, of real value, yeah? A person said, I'm not in the mood going to chakras today. I'm not in the mood. It happens all the time, no? Right? I'm not in the mood coming to the shia today. But look, you're here. I don't mean you. I know you're always in the mood because you're here like 2 hours before, so you have to be in the mood. Du bist doch nicht balkarchach. But I wake up in the morning, I'm not in the mood. What does it mean I'm not? So I'm saying, do it. No, I'm a hypocrite. You're not a hypocrite. I'm not in the mood simply means, yeah, that my parts of my body are not up to it. So what? Fine. So there's no complete oneness. The truth that I believe in has not evolved and encompassed the totality of my existence. Nu is was. That's not a hypocrite. When you identify these things, you can understand I can act on my values even if I'm not feeling it. There's no physical sensation.
Feeling that this physical sensation is also a fact.
Of course.
Is that he is exhausted.
You're right.
The second fact is
100%.
So between the two facts, he's making a business.
Exactly. And exactly, these are two truths. The fact that I'm exhausted is a fact, and it's competing against my value. And now I could make an informed choice. I can make an informed choice. Huh? Vayises raglov. Vayishlach es yada. Vayishlach Avram es yada. The body was instinctively aligned with the soul's values. Vayises raglov.
On the other hand, sometimes we have Avamil Kalkalis that says, sure, exactly, fakir.
Right. By Bilam, you're saying, by Bilam. Right. Yeah. And we know when we're very excited about something, the body is completely there, right? You tell your child it's time to get up in the morning. He's like, I haven't had enough sleep. We're going to Six Flags at 3 o'clock in the morning. Everybody's dressed with snacks. And like, really? Why couldn't you do this for the past 12 years in school? The answer is because this is not school. This is a Chalamayid Ringling Brothers. We're going to eat bananas by the Ringling Brothers on Chalamayid. So it's a whole different parsha. So the Ringling Brothers closed down, I heard, right? So what do we do Chalamayid now? We just, Six Flags, okay? Or we just eat the eggs in the house. We just eat, the main thing is the eggs, the hard-boiled eggs and the polkas. That's the main thing, in aluminum foil. Anyway, so the bottom line is, in other words, we see that the guf will respond. If something is really, if something really speaks to the guf on that level. So that's the element of ishtalshalos. There's a flow of energy and things get translated from one level to another level to another level. Then he says, shekol b'chinas ishtalshalos derech klal nikra yesh miyesh. All of ishtalshalos generally is called yesh miyesh. Yesh miyesh means it's one item, one entity that's morphed from a previous yesh. Yesh miyesh. To give that example, the apple tree in your backyard is a yesh. It comes from a yesh, and that's the seed. That seed is a yesh that comes from a previous yesh, which is the previous tree. And it always boils down to that original yesh, the original progenitor, which had within it the potential all of the subsequent yeshes. It's always yesh miyesh. This all is a metaphor for the divine flow, one form of flow of the Ein Sof, which happens from Ila to Ila, from one yesh to another yesh, as it goes down, as it flows down in a very intricate and nuanced evolutionary process from the spiritual all the way down to the physical. Vihine, I use the word evolution, please don't confuse it with Darwinism and Darwinist evolution. Here we're talking about evolution from the Ruchni to the Gashmi, from the metaphysical to the physical, and from the metaphysical to the metaphysical. V'hinei b'hishtalshalus. The second flow is l'mayla min hishtalshalus. Is one that skips through hishtalshalus. It transcends this flow. Yesh me'ayin mamish me'ayin hamuchlat. This will always be defined as yesh me'ayin, not yesh me'yesh. Yesh me'yesh is alul from Elah, from alul from Elah, from alul from Elah, You have an antecedent which has a previous antecedent, which has a previous antecedent. It's always yesh from yesh. Then there is, and that's called hishtalshalos. Then there is yesh me ayin mamish, something that emerges from ayin. What do I mean ayin? He says me ayin hamuchlat, from absolute ayin. And the reason he adds hamuchlat is there's ayin that's relative. Relative means in the world of a nail, the ideas are not really relevant, right? Try building your sukkah by explaining to your nail the importance of sukkah. The nail won't respond. The nail only believes in hammers. Why? Because in the world of the nail, your ideas don't really exist. For a person, I could explain to you something and persuade you to do something, but the nail needs the physical act of the hammer. In other words, the hammer for the nail is reality. Ideas for the nail are ayin. They don't exist, but it's not ayin hamuchlat. In another world, ideas are much more powerful than hammers, right? For a person who's a bar seichel, coming with a hammer won't do anything. Maybe just strike some fear into him. But ideas could change his life in a very deep way. Ayin hamuchlat means not relative ayin, but absolute ayin. Yesh me ayin hamuchlat means it's a new yesh. It's not yesh me yesh. It's not a development of the previous. It's not the chicken that came from the egg that came from the chicken. And in the progenitor, you had already the properties of the future reality. Yesh me ayin means ex nihilo, that it's something that emerges from nothing, so it's not an evolutionary process. It's not from seichel, then it goes down to midas, and then it goes down to machshava, and each one is basically a development of the former, which is called yesh miyesh. Yesh meyayin means it skips the process of ishtalshalos. It's a reality that is completely new, and when we say new, we don't mean relative new, we mean really new. Yesh meyayin mamish comes from nothingness comes something, and in nothingness, you don't have the properties of somethingness, because the egg has the properties that will allow a chicken to hatch. That's why from the egg of a chicken, you're not going to have an apple tree. And from the egg of a person, you're not going to have a chicken. From the egg of a mother, you're going to have a human fetus. That's just the process of things, right? And from the egg of the salmon fish, you're not going to have a carp fish or Chilean sea bass or a herring or a human being or a horse. You're going to have a salmon. Why? Because it's yesh mi yesh, and the second yesh is defined by the first yesh, which is defined by the previous yesh, which is defined by the previous yesh. Ayin doesn't have the properties of yesh. Ayin means absolutely nothing. In other words, it's a completely new reality. In our world, we don't have an example of yesh mi ayin within our own orbit, within our own activities. Similar, but not mamish.
Software. Somebody writes a software. It says it creates from nothing, and just gets an idea, and that idea is formulated in software, in the code. The same thing with the seed of the tree. The first seed of the tree, somebody had to code it. Somebody had to code that DNA. Sorry.
Right.
There's a code there. There's a software.
Yeah, I mean, but
Signature.
But we're always working with a first yesh. That's what I mean. We have examples for it, but we have to work with some first yesh. You're right, but that's the Rebbeinu Shalom. Yeah.
Yeah, but you need a computer language first.
He had a computer language. DNA is a computer language.
Will be a much.
So this has to do with there's a gap that absolutely cannot be traversed, like a run. Does this, or am I getting confused, touch on symptom shalokip shoot on symptom?
No. V'hinei b'hishtalshalus ila va'alul, whenever you have an evolution of ila va'alul, an antecedent, and its subsequent result and child, ila is the cause, alul is what comes from the ila, the chicken that comes from the egg, the tree that comes from the seed. Very beautiful words. When the alul, the child, gets close to the ila, to its progenitor, to its source, mimata lamaila, it rises from a lower place to a higher place, and it gets closer to who it is, where it comes from. It can grasp something of its source, because I come from there. And that always causes a tremendous sense of joy, of ecstasy. The alul is sas v'sameach. It rejoices and celebrates boy in the ilah. Utehi hasimcha g'doila. Vatehi hasimcha g'doila. And this joy is grand, it's great. K'mashal ben hamelech, sheyatza min hashivya, uba v'ras pnei aviv. Like the prince, interesting metaphor, like the prince who comes out of captivity, he's been abducted by gangsters for so many years. or fell into the hands of the enemy, and then that day when he comes out of Shivya, when he comes out of captivity, and he comes and he sees the face of his father. There's few joys in life that can describe that simcha of the closeness that comes after alienation and distance. Why is the simcha so great on both levels? The father or mother are so grateful and happy to be able to reunite with their child, and the child is so happy to be able to reunite with his parents, because they're really one. They're really very deeply connected, but they have been separated. The circumstances of life have separated them.
Saying that he came to self-awareness that he was royal?
Yeah, similar. All forms of this mashal. Yeah.
I think he just grew up.
Exactly, yeah. This is just, one manifestation of the mashal. But that mashal exists on so many different levels. Every ilah v'alol, the ilah really is a yesh miyesh. A yesh miyesh means you were first pregnant in the first yesh. You're a child. And then the child separates. So there's pain on both levels. There's pain on the ilah's level, there's pain on the alul's level. Whenever you're separated from yourself and who you really are, there's a certain pain. There's a certain anxiety. The great simcha of that unity, of being one with who you really are, of meeting yourself by meeting your source, that creates a very, very deep sense of joy. The joy of unification after that distance. That's the joy that the child who meets the parent who meets the child, and of course he gives this example of captivity, because when they're together, there's an expression, tainuk tmidi einoi tainuk. When you're together, you don't feel that joy. It's just like, it's inherent, it's more concealed. But the separation is one that creates a tremendous tension. And when that tension is resolved, it creates a new simcha. And we know this even, we don't have to go as far as Shivya. Sometimes a child feels alienated from parents. Parents feel alienated from children. They feel that their child has been abducted, so to speak, physically or emotionally. And when that meeting takes place, when there is that sense of clarity and unification, it's just a tremendously deep simcha. It's a celebration that is absolutely unique. If somebody's child, chas v'shalom, is going through processes and challenges and journeys, as some people around this table know very well what I'm talking about. And then when they come out on the other side, or at least come out partially on the other side, the simcha on both sides, tati, and the father and the child, or the mother and the child, is unparalleled. It's unprecedented. In spiritual language, what is it? It's the alul and the ilah coming back. It's the alul and the ilah, that the alul is masig the ilah. In spirituality, a hug is not physical. A hug is hasaga. Hasaga means, I get it. When you get it, you have it, right? You hug it. Lahasig means to reach it, to comprehend it. When you're talking about spirituality, I can't physically hug it, but I can hug it in my mind, in my soul, and my heart. So the alul is masig the ilah, and suddenly the alul is at peace. It's one of them. All the tension in our life, or I should say, all, these are big words. Much of the tension of our life is really from the alul and the ilah being in a state of dissonance. The alul is trying to make a life for itself, when really it belongs close to the ilah. And the ilah is trying to make a life for itself, when really the alul belongs to the ilah. We see this in the animal kingdom, the cry of the young, of the cubs, when mommy is away. That natural cry, because the alul and the ilah belong together. And at least at a certain stage in life, until the alul is ready to become a new ilah and create a new generation, when the birds have to fly away from the nest. So the alul and the ilah, when they come together, there is always a very deep, deep simcha. The hiskarvus of the alul to the ilah. Now, what we have to understand is that it's not always so simple, because sometimes the alul has such a hard time getting close to the ilah because there's too much pain involved. There's no pain that the alul can experience like the pain that comes from the ilah. Right? It's the sad thing of life. But the ones who are closest to you cause you the most joy, but they also could cause you the most pain. That's why Jewish kids and their mothers have a complicated relationship. Many Jewish kids, because there's nobody as close to you as your mother or your father. And therefore, when there is dissonance in that relationship, whether it's real or not real, but whenever I'm very close to somebody, I can be hurt by that person more than anybody else. A stranger can't hurt me like the one who's so close to me, because the expectations are so much deeper. So that's why the Ila and the Alul relate. When we speak about Shivya here, he's giving the very practical example, they took away the child. Sometimes life has taken away the child. Sometimes experiences have taken away the child. So when that Ila comes back to the Alul, when I can work through that pain, it's a very, very powerful experience, because beneath the pain, there's usually a yearning for closeness. And if I can identify that yearning for closeness, so then a lot of good things happen. So that's one level of simcha, when the Alul and Ila come back together. Kach, tia, simchas ha'alul, bihigalois niglois alav oir ha'ila shalamayla. Similar to the Ben HaMelech who meets his father, is going to be the simcha of the Alul, when Oir ha'ila b'higalois niglois, I love such poetry. When the oir of the ila gets revealed on the alul shalamayla, tachas ha'shayarad b'hishtalshalas. Instead of the fact that the ila descended down a long road, v'nasa merchek rav beinoyu beini losai, and a tremendous distance was created between him and his Ilah. And he became so distant from the light of his face in all of these Seisir HaMadregas, these secret levels, meaning because it went down so low, so now, and the evolution was so intense. So therefore, there is so much concealment and so much distance, but when the Alul experiences the light of the Ilah, it feels embraced. It reunites with its own core, with its own source. That's like the simcha of the child coming back to the father. Instead of the distance where you're so far, you come back. You overcame that distance because the Ilah spread out its wings. It extended its light, and the Alul was resubsumed in that original oil. Va'koil hu mipnei she'ata b'gilui zeh yesh lo hasaga. All of this is because now in this revelation, he has a hasaga. He can experience how he left darkness to light, grief became a happy day, and enslavement became redemption. The distance is a state of afela. It's a state of shibud. It's a state of avel. The person is basically separated from themselves, which is the worst form of prison. The worst form of prison is, I'm in exile. When somebody's in exile, what does it mean? It means that some others are in control over me. I'm a prison. I can't do what I want. I'm basically at your mercy. What does it mean to be in a psychological prison? I could be free physically. I could move around. But internally, I'm in a trap. Right? I'm a slave to my fears, or my insecurities, or my past, or my trauma, whatever it is. And that's where I live. I really live there. And the Alul is completely not free. The Alul has been abducted by other realities. It does not know itself. The first definition of freedom is, know thyself. To be able to know yourself. To really be able to know yourself, and then you could be yourself. That is the Alul coming back to the Ilah and experiencing it, and then it has a hasaga in the Ilah. When it has a hasaga in the Ilah, what does it mean? It's like, wow, so this is who I am. So this is who I'm supposed to be. I've been walking around with a washing machine on this shoulder, a washing machine on this shoulder, another washing machine on my head, and I thought, this is life. This is the Leben. And then it's taken off. Ooh, wow, this is what life feels like. It's like the first time a person puts on glasses and he realizes there's a world to see. Really, this is what the world looks like. All of this is an expression in a tangible way of this simcha of the Alul coming back, which is an introduction to be able to understand what simchas yomtiv is about, as we will continue Be'ezer Hashem.
But what you said at the beginning, the idea about Adam
Shlimu, the integration.
But you said something really, I mean, you said a lot of things that were fantastic and profound. This idea, which I wish I could show some of my people in the office who are supposed to be leaders, that if you amputate a part, something which is a part of yourself, then you'll end up always forcing others to amputate. It's such a tremendous yesod.
Yeah.
But when you talk about that, there has to be exposure to everything, understands everything. So I want to tell you, I showed this once before, it's in a famous...
That's basically what you spoke from Rabbi Soloveitchik about the two creations.
That's what I wanted to show you, exactly. The Rashi, he says, Ofar min Adama.
Tzavar Afrai.
Me
Arbaruchas,
Amazing. That's exactly what I wanted to show. But I remember the words in the essay. I really promise you this, I have to find it. But his words in the essay that beautifully says, there's no place in the cosmos where man feels unfamiliar. There's no place in the cosmos that he feels like he's a stranger because of this Savar Afar Mikol Avram. There's no place where he feels out of place. Yeah? Versus Mizbach Adama, it's only one place. It's
organic.
That was mamish the same idea you were saying. Yes, that's what I was thinking.
If you could send it to me, if you
I
have
have
it.
to find it. He gave it as a lecture at Rutgers University, I think in the early 70s, to very, I think, secular college students. And it became such a dramatic hit. It was ultimately written up, the text of the essay. I think it was called Majesty and Humility. I have to find it.
It's interesting about freedom.
Just 1 second.
So you say freedom, that should know yourself. It's interesting that there's a freedom, internal freedom, that's the real freedom. And there is a society freedom, which is like they impose on you. Sure, you can be free, anything. You can be anything but yourself. So, like, in America, they sometimes they hint to a Jew that you can be anything here with free society, but what you want to be yourself. So it's like a complete opposite of freedom. The freedom imposed on society is totally opposite, because freedom comes only from oneself. That's the true freedom.
Right. There's an external freedom, you're saying, the freedom where they tell you could be whatever you want, besides yourself. Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes the freedom to be whatever you want helps you forget who you are too. And then there's a different type of freedom, yeah. The real freedom.
I experienced that when I came to the United States. So that's, it's like a free society. But the minute you saw that you chose to be free, like the Jew.
Not good. Nicht good.
That is like, wow.
That we didn't want.
That we didn't want. You want to assimilate. You want like everybody else, but not like yourself.
Right. As long as freedom means you assimilate, is a good freedom.
Yeah,
We accept you.
we accept it.
Huh? You dissolve in the melting pot. Yeah, it's a different type of freedom. This freedom is
It's a real one. That's you know yourself.
the alul feels the illa. The rest, the aluls will fill in the illa. The fills the illa.
The olum is always a derivative. It's a descendant.
It's a descendant. On that level, we're soon going to see another level. By the Alter Rebbe, there's always there's this and there's that. Consciousness operates on many levels.
Also interesting language.
Huh?
It's also interesting language he uses.
It's a very interesting language.
Before it was a Machshav, jetzt ist ein Max.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
No problem. Following with his question on Adam, with the Rav spoke about yesterday morning, Shabbos morning, is that the beauty about interconnecting with
Yeah. Yeah.
How do we achieve that level?
Yeah, okay. I guess the first stage is listening. Listening to other people's experiences.
Listening to other people.
And their experiences. Yeah.
Man lernt am Maim kennen viel. Man liest in meiner.
Yeah, das ist emes. Das ist emes. Chassidus beit Mensch. Chassidus beit Mensch.
On a lighter note, you said you spoke to young people that they have to grow up and come to the Mecha means that you have to respect
Yeah.
your parents.
Yeah.
I once heard this conversation, true story. Two ladies were walking. One says, my son is such a breath, I can't wait till he gets married. So the other lady said, wait, she says, maybe you have two brass in your hand. And the funniest thing to me is I told this story to people, and many people, they don't laugh. Thank you.
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.